Hello everybody and welcome to a playthrough of the Beginner's Guide. This is the new game by Davey Redden, the developer of the Stanley Parable, or one half of the development team. We're going to be doing some first-person exploration style things and getting into some very abstract esoteric concepts, which is, I think, what you guys all love from this channel in general. I hope so anyway. So I don't know a ton about this game. We're going to be starting it off blind-ish. I had to go through about 35 seconds of it because the subtitles didn't turn on, but we're gonna nip that in the bud, or we have already, and hopefully this should be a very unique and interesting experience. So with that, let us begin the game. I think that subtitles should default to the on position for a game like this.
Hi there. Thank you very much for playing The Beginner's Guide. My name is Davey Redden. I wrote The Stanley Parable, and while that game tells a pretty absurd story, today I'm going to tell you about a series of events that happened between 2008 and 2011. We're going to look at the games made by a friend of mine named Coda. Now, these games mean a lot to me. I met Coda in early 2009 at a time when I was really struggling with some personal stuff, and his work pointed me in a very powerful direction. I found it to be a good reference point for the kinds of creative works that I wanted to make. So just to start you off, this is, I think, the first game he ever made. It's a level for Counter-Strike. You can walk around here, by the way.
That's not a game,
and
it's a level.
Mostly it's just Coda learning the basics of building a 3D environment. But what I like is that even though he starts from the simple aesthetic of a desert town, he then scatters these colorful abstract blobs and impossible floating crates around the level. And of course, it destroys the illusion that this actually is a desert town, and instead this level becomes a kind of calling card from its creator. It's like a reminder that this video game was constructed by a real person. And it kind of makes you wonder, what was going through his head as he was building this? This is what I like about all of Coda's games. I mean, not that they're all fascinating as games, but that they are all going to give us access to their creator. I want us to see past the games themselves. I want to get to know who this human being really is. And that's exactly what we're going to do here. So, it's 2008, Coda starts making these games, and he never releases any of them. He doesn't put them onto the internet, he just makes them and then immediately abandons them, and they sit on his computer forever. And I think he really understood this image of himself as a recluse. At one point he jokingly renamed his computer's recycling bin to Important Games Folder. So, you know, this was just how he worked. He tended to crank them out one after the other without even really pausing to try to understand what he had just made, until suddenly one day he just stopped. In 2011, that was it. He made his last game, and then he hasn't made another one since. And that's why I've taken this opportunity to gather all of his work together, is because I find his games powerful and interesting, and I'd like this collection to reach him, to maybe encourage him to start creating again. And if the people like you who play this also happen to find his work interesting, then I'm sure it'll just send that much stronger of a message of encouragement to Coda. So thanks for joining me on this. If you have a particular interpretation that I haven't mentioned here, or if you just need to get in touch, you can email me at daveywreden@gmail.com. Okay, that's about it for introduction. Let's take a look at Coda's first proper game. As each game is loading, I'll show you the date that it was completed. This first one was made in November 2008.
I love this premise, by the way, like, a lot. This is what I do all the time. Like, I look at every game that I'm given in this same sort of introspective way. The first thing that I start wondering, though, is Coda a real person, first of all? Is this a truthful narrative? Like, what element of this is constructed for the game element, or what part of this was co-opted from reality? And, well, then I just start to wonder about how much we're trying to be influenced here. But this will obviously become more clear as we get further in. Most likely all of it was created, but I don't know if there was maybe a granule of truth in this or something like that. Coda is a... Oh god, I have a gun.
This game is called Escape from Whisper, and it's one of the more generic games you'll see from Coda.
This looks better than a lot of things that I play, though. Why are there chunks of blocks floating here? I guess I'm not meant to go this way. It's like this slowly turning little chunk of rock, though. Like, you had to go through trouble to animate this going in a circle. That's just kind of curious to me. How's the audio now? Is it too loud now that there's music? A lot of ambient sounds happening. This has got like a perfect dark look to this corridor. Depends on the engine.
Security call breached. Hostile alien life forms inbound.
Cool. Well, hopefully you can
It
hear
kinda
me
looks like
okay.
this game was abandoned mid-development. For instance, you have this gun, which you'd think would indicate that there are supposed to be monsters or enemies somewhere, but then clearly there are no enemies anywhere. You can't even reload the gun when you run out of bullets.
Great timing.
But ultimately we don't really know. Maybe Coda thought that actually it was complete the way that it is. And I think that we should talk about his games for what they are, rather than for what they're not.
Enemy force neutralized. Begin ship evacuation.
Okay, so now that I've run out of bullets, there's no more shooting. I actually quite like the concept of a shooter
I love
with
how
a
you
gun.
can see the bottom of the universe from this room.
Oh, great. This is the stuff I would normally be noticing. You're blowing up my spot here, Davey. But yeah, I like the premise of a shooter with a gun and with nothing to shoot. I don't know, there's something very out there about that.
Apparently this space station has a labyrinth on it. Sure, I don't know. There's really no reason for it that I've ever been able to discern, so in the interest of time, I'm just gonna skip you on past it.
This is so funny. I feel like I'm doing like a collaborative video right now.
Okay, this is the part that's interesting. The game has this narrative about the whisper machine and how it has to be turned off, and then you get to the engine room.
Yep. No, you gotta turn it off. Make it inactive. Yeah, there it is.
Hey, you there? In
The anomalous materials
You
room.
could save us all. That beam is powering a whisper machine. We could disrupt it by introducing a great enough heat signature. If your body could stop the beam. It's so much to ask, but for all of our lives, would you do it? Could
This
you
has
give
really good
yourself-
voice acting. Like, for a game that looks like this, the voice acting is way better. That's so funny. Alright. I'll be Steven. I'll activate my gem shield. Whee! Oh. They
Let me
half-life
pause here
me.
for a second. What you just experienced, stepping into the beam and then dying, is probably what Coda had initially intended when he was developing this level. But when he first compiles and plays it, something goes wrong. There's a bug somewhere. And this is what happens instead.
Oh, there we go. We're getting Proteused. Oh, we get to see the labyrinth.
The beam causes you to start floating. And this is an important moment for him. Because yes, this is technically a glitch, but Coda identifies something human about it. Like how small it makes you feel in the face of this larger chaotic system. Or this floating could be the afterlife, a peaceful place, juxtaposed against all of the hysteria that you've just had to traverse. I don't even know. I have no idea what he was thinking, but what's clear is that after making this, something lodges itself in his brain. He wants to do more of these really weird and experimental designs. So he stops work on this and moves on to a stream of tiny little games that go in all sorts of directions. Let's go ahead and take a look at the first game he made after leaving this one behind.
This is such a cool premise. I want to hang out with this guy. I feel like you'd have
In this
fantastic.
game,
Oh, we
you
can only walk backwards. Alright. This is like me playing LD games, getting ready to do a bunch of coverage. We're just getting them with like a nice little stitched together narrative between each one.
So
The
it's a
future
short
cannot be
and
seen.
relatively minimalist experiment combining motion and narrative. It is less advanced than the previous game, but actually it seems to be more focused, more complete. Coda's trying to give it a unique voice rather than simply basing it on a pre-existing trope.
I've like played this game before. I think this game was only made for the purposes of this situation, but like this seems just like a thing that I've seen or played. It's this it's sort of a resourceful element of like the developer is looking at all the ways that you can subvert the usual tropes that you see in something like a first-person game, and you go, well, like, what can I easily modify that would have a drastic change on the actual gameplay from moment to moment? And this is sort of like adapting to a pretty simple way of streamlining or minimalizing keyboard inputs, right? So you take a constraint, you put like an artificial constraint on yourself, and then you design around it. And this is pretty cool. No talk, please.
It's a short little thought, it says what it wants to say, and then it ends. Didn't need anything more than that. Which to me is why it works, because it gets out quick. Okay, next one.
Oh, I can walk forward this time. Very, very small view radius. This is, again, another engine constraint that we're working within. You are now entering. Oh. What about if I... Yeah, I'm still entering. No talk, please.
And that's it. Okay, the meaning of this game won't be clear just yet. Please be patient with me for a few more games, and I promise you'll see what makes it interesting. Oftentimes, Coda would put bizarre titles like this one at the start of his games. I wish I'd known him at the time that he was making these early games. He would really only talk to me about his work as he was making it. Once he stopped work on a game, like, that was it. It was dead to him. And I don't agree with that at all, but what are you gonna do?
Well, everyone's got a different style. This framing shot, by the way that this opened, is actually really elegant. Even though it uses sort of like a prefab stair model here, which I believe you can even see this little bit of a frame clipping through. Well, maybe that's intentional. I thought maybe it was just Z-fighting, but no, you can see it. And it looks a little bit simple, but at the same time, the simplicity in this case comes across nicely. So the obvious thing is go up the stairs, but what if you don't go up the stairs?
I know it's tempting, but there's actually nothing over here.
Oh, see? Sorry. You know me! You know me! It is tempting. Alright. I guess we'll go up the stairs then. Jump off the edge. Actually, I do want to see what he says if I try that. I appreciate that he seems to consider contextual elements. Oh. There should have been a dialogue option if I try to walk into the wall on the sides. Oh well. The stairs are a trap. They're critiquing a game about critiquing games. Yeah, what does the world come to, right? Oh.
Once you've been slowed to an absolute crawl, the door at the top of the stairs opens. So why, if Coda's not showing these games to anyone, why bother opening the door at all?
Because it's haunted.
Well, to show you, I'm modifying the game here so that when you press enter, it'll bring you back up to full speed so you can enter the door for yourself.
This is very interesting. I feel like a lot of people that are starting out with something this primitive, creating a bunch of, like, just cubes and then a set of prefab stairs that leads up to a door, if that's like your level design ethos, you're probably not thinking about stuff like the mystery at the top of the door, right? But this could be, you know, an elevated sense of artistry that maybe somebody has found their calling in simplicity, and I kind of like that. So I'm pressing enter. And when we get up here... Oh... You run a shop inside your own body, selling your organs strategically to make the most money before you die. A game where you collect items, except the game automatically quits when you collect them all.
Nice and filled with little ideas for games.
Posters and concept art showing what the game intended to be. The stranger appears. A game of only motivational quotes played one after another.
Coda would often tell me that he didn't mind if people thought of him as cold or distant. He said that he knew that he was actually a vibrant and compassionate person, but that it takes time to really see that. It can be a very slow climb to get there.
Plays a pair of floating eyes emitting footstep noises. Don't we usually do that? You're the queen, Dusty. Oh, I wasn't done reading. GoldenEye? This looks like Archives, but with a orange strip instead of green.
Well,
Really
this is
seems to
new
like
for
that
Coda.
strip lighting.
It's an actual puzzle.
It is?
Go ahead and see if you can solve it.
It's a lever. Was there smoke in here? Is this a puzzle? I don't... You want me to flip the switch while I'm halfway through the door and then it'll open? There we are.
Don't forget that solution, because we're going to see this puzzle again soon. We're gonna see it a lot.
What is this? This is like a coconut reference or a bowling ball reference built into the wall. I hate this texture seam though. You know how people flip out about typefaces sometimes? This is the way I get with texture seams. I'm like totally obsessed with them in a way that's really unhealthy. Alright, we've fallen off, we cannot go back.
So that seems to be it, right? You walk down a corridor, you solve the puzzle, you get to the end. Simple enough. Alright, now I'm going to modify the game again so that when you press enter, it'll remove all of the walls from this room.
Oh, this is the thing that I saw in the concept art or picture, whatever. So it's this massive complex that just sealed
How
off.
about that? There was more to it than we had any way of knowing. I actually find it funny that this game comes after the Stairs game, since they essentially convey the opposite idea. So, in the Stairs game, a dull exterior concealed a rich interior, and then, in this level, a dull interior hides this fantastic outer world. Either way, I think that the point is the same, is that most of the time you don't get to know what you're missing, or even that you're missing anything. That's not your role as a player. So if your role here is not to understand, then what is it?
Asking me if I've ever seen a wooden floor. It's different. You are now exiting.
Aha. So, this, combined with the entering game from earlier, tells us that Coda believes his games are connected somehow. It could even be that the Stairs game and the puzzle game are literally connected in between this and the entering game. There's a bigger picture that all of his games are meant to play a role in, some larger meaning that we won't be able to grasp until we've seen all of them. And once we have, we can step back and start to understand what exactly that bigger picture is.
You certainly have my interest. The great and lovely descent. Ah, we've unlocked higher quality models, I believe. Somebody got a cash infusion to spend at the Unity
Let's talk about
Asset
video
Store.
game development for a second.
Just playing.
Every video game runs on what's called an engine, which determines what the game can and cannot do.
Yes.
So in other words, the engine is a set of tools for game development.
Gotcha. I'm with you so far.
To make all of these games, Coda is using an engine called Source. Like all engines, Source has certain things that it does well, and it has certain things that it does poorly.
Chairs.
One of the things that it does very well is boxy linear corridors. That's why so many of Coda's games are set in these large, flat, empty rooms, is just because he's working with what the engine does well.
No, this is not
The
good.
tools available to the creator shape what kinds of creative work they're going to end up making. You might consider paying attention to the architecture in Coda's games to notice how they seem to stem from an engine that's very good at producing linear, boxy corridors.
Texture! This is one of the points that I talk about when I look at video games in general quite often, actually, is the marks that the engine will leave on structures or architecture or even design philosophies or engine choices in how you choose to portray a single object. I mean, if this was not Source, I wonder if these chairs would look like this, you know? And I think as we've gotten away from this engine, actually, and people more have been embracing Unity, you see a lot more diversity in these sorts of things, and it's been harder to really peg down which engine is responsible for what. But it's invariably a thing that comes into the conversation a lot more than you'd think. In fact, it can be an artistic decision to purposely subvert what an engine typically looks like, to take something like Source and purposely obfuscate the blockiness of it all by going way out of their way and making way more work for themselves, but in the end, it might be something that's an interesting decision to do. Oh, here we go. Oh, see? We went from complex texture work to primitive flat shading on primitives. So now we're doing some, like, mirrors edging. As the world has fallen apart. Can I just skip ahead a few here? No hurry, but still. No reason to bother with most of those when I can just kind of, like, do that, I guess. Oh, there we are. What's at the bottom of this? Oh, I guess if I just fell off of all of this, I didn't have to actually do any of it. That's actually quite pretty right there. It looks kind of constructivist. I quite like, actually, some of the shots that you get to make look like artwork just by themselves. Being able to put together a composition based on your perspective and framing. Why is this, like, smoky glass here? I don't understand this. I guess to force you to walk down the stairs. Maybe we can't go in the center at all. It keeps looking like GoldenEye. I guess it's just leftover Counter-Strike stuff or Half-Life stuff. What's going on in here? This looks like a jail. Yeah. This is either jail or, like, cattle herding area. Oh, we're being herded! We're being herded into a jail cell. Wait, we're going up. I didn't even know I was on a lift, actually.
This prison, funny enough, in Coda's original design, the doors stayed shut for a full hour before letting you go. If you don't mind, I think we're gonna skip that.
He sticks to his
This is
principles.
something that he and I used to argue about a lot. You know, whether a game ought to actually be playable, whether it means anything if no one can get through it. And I would always defend that, you know, all this work goes into the game, why not make it playable and accessible? And so we just got into heated arguments over it, and there was one time that after one of these conversations, he went home, and a day or two later, he sent me a zip file entitled Playable Games that was full of hundreds of individual games, each of which was just an empty box that you walked around in and nothing else. Believe me, I played every single one of those just to find out if there was like a gag hidden somewhere. There wasn't.
I really relate to this, actually, because I've had the same arguments with people when I was in school, that I kind of wanted to make things that were less accessible or just more personal to me, and I was hoping that people could appreciate it on its face value, that maybe aesthetically they would enjoy a composition, or maybe they'd be able to glean something of it that maybe I'd never thought about in my own perspective. And 90% of the time, people just didn't get it, or didn't care, or thought it was stupid, or like a waste of time. So I got frustrated by that, and I sort of did the same thing, like a, you know, kind of a petulant cry for help of like, hey, I don't care what you think, I'm gonna make what I like because I'm rebellious and I have vision, damn it. And it was always met with the same sort of frustration that's like, why don't you just fall in line and do the thing that people expect? So I totally sympathize with both sides of this. And it's a surprisingly interesting correlation to make. Also, some of these bits of geography, these structures are actually quite cool looking by themselves. Whether or not they go anywhere or do anything, they're still just neat structures to walk around. It's funny that they make you walk down the spiral staircase slowly like that. Oh. You didn't seal up the lighting. What's going on over here? Oh, I like these little archways. This looks like something I would have done, actually, in Unreal Tournament. Made structures like this all the time.
It's the puzzle again, with the exact same solution as the last time.
Okay. I mean, you didn't have to tell me. I probably would have gotten the idea. But there's probably a reason for this puzzle being significant, I would imagine. It's rewarding the person who takes the time to go out of their way and search for something that seems impossible.
There's still no clear indication of what makes this puzzle so special that Coda is going to return to it over and over. But I promise I'll share with you my interpretation very shortly.
You don't have to share it, it's okay, I trust you. See, I don't like, he doesn't need to keep telling us it's gonna be okay. Like, I'm along for the ride already, but I guess for the same reason that he discussed earlier, a lot of people aren't along for the ride. And look at that very careful alignment of texture there. See the seam where the skybox, where it meets the wall to the ceiling? Very carefully considered how that cloud is gonna look, and I appreciate that. Even though it's not entirely perfect, it is very close, and I may not have even noticed, if not for the fact that the lighting is a little bit different across those two planes. Oh, there's people inside. Alright, I can turn down the music just a little bit if you'd like. If that would help. Wait a minute, how did it get to 100? See if that's a bit better. Plot twist, Nick is Dakota. Yeah, that would be pretty interesting. What?
Here, Coda begins using a kind of dialogue system that he fashioned out of the engine's chat capabilities.
That's so cool.
Use the 1, 2, 3 buttons on your keyboard to respond.
You there, did you come from up above? What was up there? Yes, there was a world stamped with whiteness. Yes, there was an enormous prison I spent hours in. Yes, there were these floating colored blocks. Huh. So it's asking you which of those three primarily stuck out in your mind as the most prevalent. And I would say if I was role-playing the situation, the prison would probably be the most obvious, considering I spent an hour, quote-unquote, in it. So I'll say 2. The world above, you've been there. Now this is important. Did you have to get through a puzzle with 2 doors and switches? Yes, I did. That was literally the last thing I did before coming in here. No, I don't remember having to go through any puzzle. I prefer not to tell you. After all, we only just met. Yeah, I'm gonna pick 3. That seems funny. What? But you don't understand. We are trapped here. That puzzle is our only escape. We need to get through it. You think you want to get through, but trust me, you don't. Let me describe it for you. Let me tell you all about what is over there. Alright, I'll tell you how to solve it. Alright, changed my mind on that one. I'll tell you how to solve it. Wonderful! I'm not telling you, I guess. Speak to me and tell me how to escape. Tell me how to be free from this prison. I must know. It's the most important thing. There must be an ending. Oh. Oh, look at this little furnace. Actually, in a little ambient noise there. What an oddly shaped house, too. I like this. There's a texture in Marathon, actually, that had a very similar pattern to it. It wasn't wood, it was like stone, but it had these little sconces of lighting that actually, in this case, they're completely invisible, but it was on the player, or the developer of the levels, to create light sources that match the texture, which I thought was such an interesting observation, that you'd have to actually go out of your way to create geometry that correlates with a lighting effect, because they didn't have dynamic lighting like that, other than like on or off or oscillations in between. Alright. How did you get here? Was there a puzzle you had to pass through? Yes, do you want to know how to solve it? I'll keep teasing you and saying that. No, we actually find the blank space between the doors to be far more interesting. Have you seen it yet? Why would I care about the space between the doors? Actually, now that you mention it, I remember feeling strange I passed through it. Or I don't recall the space between the doors. Yeah, I like the space between the doors. Don't think too hard about it. You'll see it again soon. It's funny because there's no way that this is like, I'm gonna buy this story as that this is just a coder's first work. Like, nobody puts this much thought into their first doodles.
And so we make one last descent down to the final floor of the level.
At least, well, I shouldn't say nobody, but I've hardly ever run into somebody that's been this enigmatic with such simple geometry and things like this. It's surprisingly standing out to me more than I thought it would. Oh, is this the title screen? Are we outside?
It's a lamppost. Okay, I can't tell you quite why, but for some reason, Coda fixates on this lamppost. It's going to appear at the end of every single one of his games from here on out.
It's a beacon.
I'll tell you what I think. I think that up to this point, he's been making really strange and abstract games with no clear purpose, and maybe you can only float around in that headspace for so long. Because now he wants something to hold on to. He wants a reference point. He wants the work to be leading to something. He wants a destination, which is what this lamppost is. It's a destination. We're going to see it in the work as well. His games are just going to become a lot more cohesive, a lot more fully developed, with more of a clear idea behind them. And as we go, that idea will get clearer and clearer and clearer.
Okay. Oh, fade to black. That one door over there looked like it was going to open, but apparently not.